Hello, my name is Sarah Rains, and today I will be discussing the Lindbergh trial, a pivotal event in 1935. This trial, which saw the accused Bruno Richard Hauptmann stand trial for the kidnapping and murder of Charles Lindbergh Jr., holds a significant place in history. I chose this topic for my research because I live in Flemington, a mere 2 minutes from the Hunterdon County Courthouse, the site of which was famously dubbed the trial of the century, aka the home of the Lindbergh trial. While in the end, Hauptmann was found guilty and sentenced to death, there's a lot of debate on the constitutionality of the trial, including the violation of due process, reliance on circumstantial evidence, and media interference. In this video presentation, I will argue that the Lindbergh trial fails to uphold constitutional protections, especially the right to a fair trial. I will also address the appropriate counterarguments about the state procedure and testimonial evidence. I will also mention some conspiracies which have, or may have, interfered with the trial. In any criminal case, especially one with this much national attention, it's crucial that due process is strictly followed. It is extremely important. There were lots of signs that in this trial that was not the case. In the article Criminal Law, briefed by Rachel Mitchell, she explains how the trial is more like a performance about the guilt of Hauptmann rather than the legal truth. And I quote, "This trial's performance has been reconsidered despite the finality and verdict of Hauptmann's execution." One major issue with the case was that the newspaper hired Hauptmann's legal counsel in exchange for exclusive interviews. This raised huge ethical issues and questions. The fact that Hauptmann mentioned, "he is killing me," in regards to his defense attorney really showcases the moral dilemma, and that the potential he did not have proper counsel. Despite that, many supporters of the verdict and fans of Charles Lindbergh argued that New Jersey followed all the laws correctly, and that the presence of a judge and jury means that due process was correctly followed. Due process is more than procedure, though, it is about fairness. This brings me to my next critical question. Was the jury really impartial? The Sixth Amendment guarantees an impartial jury, but impartiality isn't just an oath. It's whether the jurors can decide the case free from outside influence, which seems impossible with Charles Lindbergh's identity. Charles Lindbergh was not just famous, he was seen as a national hero. Due to the trial being about him, the media flocked to the scene. Hundreds of reporters surrounded the courthouse, creating a circus-like environment. The level of publicity during the trial makes it very hard for the jurors not to be informed or influenced mid-trial. According to the Bill of Rights in Action, over 700 reporters attended, and the courthouse had to build a special airstrip to fly Hauptmann out daily. Some argue that the press ensured transparency and kept the public well informed. However, the lines between openness and manipulation of the trial is very blurry, and the lines seem to have been crossed. Mitchell notes that the trial's outcome was decided more by narrative than legal arguments. While much of the trial is focused on Bruno Hauptmann, we cannot overlook Charles Lindbergh's celebrity and political status in shaping the courtroom. Lindbergh was much more than just a father. As I mentioned earlier, he was a national hero. But not too long before the start of the trial, Lindbergh was going through a lot of political controversy and turmoil. In the late 1930s, he became a leader of the America's First Committee, a movement that was opposed to the United States' involvement in World War II, particularly with Germany. Even more troubling, Lindbergh would openly praise Adolf Hitler. In 1938, he was given a medal from the Nazi officials and described Germany as invincible. He also made speeches warning against Jews, involvement, and influence in media and government expressed concerns about immigrants weakening the American character. This is very important because Bruno Richard Hauptmann was a German immigrant. In the 1930s, anti-immigrant and anti-German sentiments were widespread, and Lindbergh's public comments helped to reinforce that bias, which could influence the jurors later on. Why does this matter in the trial? Because Lindbergh's image was practically untouchable. His fame and public charisma gave him tremendous influence in politics and in the courtroom. His voicing that Hauptmann was guilty was enough to make it almost a undeniable truth. Would the jury really have believed another person who was in the same situation as Hauptmann? If he was going against somebody who was going with less than a status than Lindbergh, would he have seen maybe a different kind of outcome? Another noteworthy point is the controversial relationship between Charles Lindbergh and his son. Some historical texts suggest that Lindbergh had a distant and/or cold relationship with his son, Charles Jr. Lindbergh believed in strict discipline and even kept detailed notes of his son's behavior, which makes sense because he was most likely a follower of eugenics, seeing as how he was a fan of Nazi Germany. He was often upset that his son seemed weaker than usual. Anne Morrow Lindbergh's journal makes subtle references to Lindbergh being very emotionally removed as a father. This is important because it raises the question of whether the media painted him as a hero while suppressing the family dynamic that may have been involved. This does not have anything to do with Hauptmann potentially being innocent. It raises questions about the emotional biases that may have been built into the case. Lindbergh's emotional state influenced all of America, including how the jury interpreted his testimony and how the evidence was handled. Another mystery to the case was the strange handling of his son Charles Lindbergh Jr.'s body, and the location he was buried. After the decomposed remains were found near the Lindbergh estate, Charles Lindbergh quickly ordered the body to be cremated. This meant a proper autopsy was never conducted. According to the New York City Archives, some medical professionals claimed the autopsy was performed by a funeral director, not by a coroner. This raises a lot of concerns about the integrity of the evidence. If a formal autopsy had been conducted, there might have been more clarification of the exact cause and time of death of Charles Lindbergh Jr., which could have been key for Hauptmann's defense. Another unsettling fact is the body was discovered only a few miles from the Lindbergh home, suggesting the possibility that the baby was never taken far at all. This contradicts the ransom instructions and the claim that the baby was held for multiple weeks. Some of the texts even suggest that the baby died the same night, and whether the ransom exchange was just a diversion. Lindbergh was having some issues publicly because of his affiliation with the Nazis. Isn't the timing a little bit convenient? These questions contribute to the growing belief that justice was rushed to protect public figures and not the truth. Supporters of Hauptmann's prosecution pointed out forensic handwriting and wood evidence declaring it as decisive proof of Hauptmann's guilt. The Journal of American Society question documented that examiners said that 8 handwriting experts linked Hauptmann to the ransom note using spelling errors and writing quirks. One of the 8 experts even said it was irresistible, unanswerable, and overwhelming. On the other hand, Mitchell points out that Hauptmann's writing samples may have been manipulated. In the film, Crime of a Century, we see a dramatized version where the police coach Hauptmann into misspelling words to match the ransom notes, raising serious doubts about the integrity of the evidence. Additionally, the wood analysis only connects a single board from Hauptmann's attic to the ladder. There is no fingerprint, witnesses, or circumstantial evidence. With evidence like this, how can Hauptmann be guilty beyond a reasonable doubt? I could understand a ponderance of evidence, but this means that there is 100% certainty that Hauptmann committed this crime. The Lindbergh trial will always be an example of how public emotion, media, and politics can shape justice. While many people feel satisfied with the outcome of the justice and that was given, modern scrutiny suggests that Bruno Hauptmann's constitutional rights may have been violated, and his guilt remains debated. Whether you believe in his guilt or innocence, the real question is whether the system worked as it was supposed to. This is the end of my presentation, and I hope it was informational.